We have to support the microbiome. We can't keep killing it. And people who bathe multiple times a day, typically they have unhealthy skin, they have acne, you're destroying the microbiome. And that's an important health component of every organ in the body.
Welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers, and on this show, we talk about everything related to heavy metal and chemical toxicity, the health issues caused by these toxins, and we get into advanced biohacking, bioenergetics, and more advanced topics than you're going to hear on other shows. I don't really do the basics so much. But on the show today, we have a really good friend of mine, Dr. Nathan Bryan, and he is an expert in nitric oxide. So we're going to talk about everything that is affected by lack of nitric oxide. For instance, if you have high blood pressure, if you have erectile dysfunction and dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these health issues are from a lack, or in part, from a lack of nitric oxide. Even diabetes and insulin resistance. Again, we go into the mechanism about how this is a lack of nitric oxide. We talk about how nitric oxide dilates all of your blood vessels and how that can reduce your high blood pressure when you supplement with it, how you can improve insulin sensitivity, how you can also improve erectile dysfunction, and just so many other benefits. And we also talk about some of the shocking things that reduce nitric oxide production: use of fluoride toothpaste, fluoride mouthwashes, use of mouthwashes that kill bacteria in your mouth that make nitric oxide and can affect it so much it can negate the benefits of exercise. And when I heard that, I was like, I heard it on another podcast and when that Nathan was on, and I stopped using mouthwash immediately. Even my natural essential oil based mouthwash, it doesn't matter if it's killing your nitric oxide producing bacteria. So we talk about what's the story with beets, and we talk about just a lot of different topics on this subject. Really, really good in-depth show today. So our guest, Dr. Nathan Bryan, he earned his undergraduate degree or his undergraduate Bachelor of Science degree in biochemistry from UT Austin and his doctoral degree from Louisiana State University School of Medicine in Shreveport, where he was the recipient of the Dean's Award for Excellence in Research. He pursued his postdoctoral training at the Kirstein Fellow at Boston University School of Medicine and the Whitaker Cardiovascular Institute. And after a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in 2006, Dr. Bryan was recruited to join the faculty at the UT Health Science Center at Houston by Farid Murad, 1998 Nobel laureate in medicine or physiology. Dr. Bryan's been involved in nitric oxide research for the past 25 years, has made many seminal discoveries in the field. He's also a successful entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Bryan Therapeutics, a privately held clinical stage biotechnology company that's actively engaged in the discovery and development of nitric oxide-based therapies. And BTI has active drug development programs in heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, and topical drugs for diabetic ulcer and non-healing wounds. Dr. Bryan also has a consumer line of products that are some of the most successful nitric oxide products on the market, and you can find those at n101.com. Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you're an expert on nitric oxide. So tell us, what is that?
Nitric oxide is this really phenomenal gas that's naturally produced in the body. It's a signaling molecule. It dilates blood vessels, improves tissue oxygenation, mobilizes stem cells, activates telomerase, and turns on our mitochondria to more efficiently make cellular energy. So everything we know about health optimization, longevity, and disease prevention is dependent upon adequate and sufficient production of nitric oxide.
Yeah, and so is, if you have high blood pressure also, you need nitric oxide to kind of relax and expand those blood vessels as well.
Yeah, I say that nitric oxide fixes the physics problem of hypertension. And what I mean by that is, we all have a finite amount of volume of blood going through our blood vessels. And so if you make adequate nitric oxide, it dilates the blood vessels with each heartbeat. If you can make nitric oxide, you get chronically constricted blood vessels. So now you get that same volume of blood going through smaller pipes. And laws of physics is pressure equals volume times resistance. If resistance goes up, volume stays the same, pressure has to go up. And so if we can give nitric oxide or restore the natural production of nitric oxide, we dilate the blood vessels and pressure comes down. So a very important contributor to adequate and normal healthy blood pressure, because hypertension is the number one driver of the number one killer, which is cardiovascular disease.
Yes, yeah. And then also let's talk about erections as well. So Viagra, that's working by increasing that nitric oxide. I want to get the guys' attention here, so they're really paying attention.
Well, yeah, no, the nitric oxide is what causes the vasodilation. And the PD5 inhibitors like Viagra for erectile dysfunction work downstream of nitric oxide. So these drugs don't affect nitric oxide production. They affect nitric oxide signaling. So when nitric oxide is produced, it increases a second messenger called cyclic GMP. Then there's an enzyme called phosphodiesterase that degrades the cyclic GMP. So if you give a phosphodiesterase inhibitor, you prolong the accumulation of cyclic GMP, and then that's responsible for calcium mobilization, smooth muscle relaxation, and vasodilation. And so erections are a result of vasodilation and increase in blood flow. We call that engorgement. And that's both in men and women. But we know that 50% of the men that are prescribed Viagra or Cialis don't respond with better erections. So these drugs, billions of dollars a year in revenue, only work in 50% of the men. And the reason they don't respond is because these men aren't making any nitric oxide to increase cyclic GMP. So there's nothing for these drugs to work on. So that told us years ago that erectile dysfunction is a symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. So now if we restore nitric oxide, you can take non-responders to PD5 inhibition therapy, make them respond with better erections, or you can, best case scenario, wean them off of the drug and just let the body respond naturally to the natural production of nitric oxide.
Yeah, and so how do we produce it naturally?
Well, it was first discovered to be through an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase, and we call that NOS, and it's found primarily in our endothelial cells, and those are the cells that line all blood vessels throughout the body, even our lymphatics. So this enzyme converts L-Arginine, which is an amino acid, into a very complex 5-electron oxidation, creates nitric oxide gas. And then the metabolic byproduct of that is L-citrulline. So citrulline is a byproduct of nitric oxide production, and it's not a precursor. And so today we understand the enzymology and the biochemistry, and when that enzyme becomes uncoupled and dysfunctional, now it converts arginine into superoxide instead of nitric oxide. So giving arginine as a supplement to people with endothelial dysfunction is a really, really bad idea. In fact, in 96, a clinical trial was published that, post-infarct patients who just had a heart attack were given arginine as a supplement versus a placebo, and the patients who received the arginine had higher morbidity, higher mortality. They stopped the clinical trial halfway through because it was unethical to keep giving these patients arginine because they were dying. And then the same thing happened in a cohort of patients with peripheral artery disease. The arginine group got worse. So that refocused the science on how do we maintain the function of the enzyme to where if you have nitric L-arginine around, which is inside the cell already, how do we convert that into nitric oxide? So that's why we focus on the function of the enzyme, what prevents NOS uncoupling, what maintains NOS function and adequate nitric oxide production. So that's what we call the NOS pathway, and that's endothelial function or endothelial dysfunction.
And now a word from one of our sponsors. Two of the most powerful supplements for women's health are whey protein and creatine. Studies show that women have about 70 to 80% lower natural creatine stores than men, which impacts our muscle function, muscle recovery, our brain functioning, and even our mood. Pure Creatine Plus combines pure creatine monohydrate with taurine to support muscle strength, performance, muscle recovery, faster workout recovery, and cognitive health as well. And I love the results of taking creatine. I honestly had never taken creatine before in my life, before I started taking the Pure Creatine, and I absolutely love its effect on my mental clarity. And it is also especially beneficial for both pre and post-menopausal women as well. It's shown in research to support bone health, improve cortisol response, support thyroid function, and so much more. And like everything that Pure makes, each batch of Creatine Plus is third-party tested for over 200 harmful contaminants, and it's clean certified by the Clean Label Project as well. So you're only getting clean, safe ingredients. And the test results are published online for complete transparency. All you have to do is scan the QR code on the bottle. Now let's talk about whey protein. So protein is essential for women. A lot of people are not getting enough protein, and many protein powders on the market are loaded with toxins and heavy metals and harmful contaminants. But the Clean Label Project reviewed over 160 top-selling protein powders in the US and found that 47% exceeded California Prop 65 safety limits for lead, with 21 containing double the acceptable amount. And so that's horrifying when you think about it and how many people are drinking protein shakes daily, believing that they're doing something healthy. And so that's why I use and trust Puree's PW1 whey protein. I absolutely love the vanilla flavor. It tastes incredible. I love the dark chocolate also. Like, it tastes like a fancy chocolate milk, but it's clean and safe, not like a lot of other cacaos and chocolate products on the market. And my daughter Winter, loves the vanilla flavor. She loves making smoothies. And recently, Vogue also named Puree PW1 whey protein the best overall whey protein powder. And for all the right reasons, if you ask me. Like I said, my daughter's making smoothies daily, and I have peace of mind knowing that she's using this protein powder that's clean, pure, and safe, and it's been tested for purity. And so here's how I use the PW1 and the creatine every morning. I make a shake with coconut water, a scoop of the PW1 protein and the creatine plus, and I add berries, maybe a banana, some dates, a little pinch of salt. And that helps me stay strong, focused, and energized throughout the day. And I know that I feel good knowing that I'm fueling my body with truly clean supplements. And so go feel the difference for yourself. Taste the difference also. Go to puree.com/Wendy and use code Wendy at checkout for 20% off. Again, that's PURI.com/Wendy. And that code even works on your already discounted subscriptions, giving you almost a third off of the regular price. So don't wait. Go try the PW and the Creatine Plus today. Clean, science-backed supplements that you can actually trust. Again, go to puree.com/Wendy and use coupon code Wendy. And aren't there exercises that you can do to increase nitric oxide?
Well, any exercise, really, anything that when we begin to exercise, whether it's, a brisk walk or even resistance training, that causes shear stress in the lining of the blood vessels, so that activates and turns on nitric oxide production. So then that's your body telling you, hey, I need to dilate these blood vessels and get more oxygen to these working skeletal muscles or cardiac muscle to meet the increased metabolic demands.
Yeah, but there's bacteria on our skin and in our mouth that make nitric oxide too, correct?
Now, for sure. So that's the second, what we call the compensatory redundant pathway, where the bacteria that live, there's different classes of bacteria in our mouth, in our gut, and on our skin. And so the nitrate reducing bacteria are found in the GI tract, primarily on the dorsal part of the tongue, some in the lower GI. But these bacteria convert nitrate, which is found in green leafy vegetables, and do that 2-electron reduction to nitrite. Then when we swallow our saliva, we produce nitric oxide in the lumen of the stomach. And so we have to maintain an oral healthy microbiome. We have to have adequate stomach acid production, and we have to have the right diet to fuel this pathway. And then on the skin, there's what's called ammonia oxidizing bacteria. So when we sweat, we're secreting both nitrate and, to extent, ammonia. And the ammonia oxidizing bacteria oxidize ammonia to nitric oxide gas. Then that nitric oxide that's produced on the surface of the skin prevents, pathogenic bacteria from overcolonizing. It prevents fungal infections, dermatitis, many important things, and maintains adequate dermal blood flow.
Yeah, I saw you on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and you were talking about how using mouthwash will kill the bacteria that helps to produce nitric oxide. I've had bad breath ever since. I stopped using my mouthwash. I was like, oh no, because you said that it will kind of cancel out the effects of exercise almost. So there's pretty big repercussions from using mouthwash, and everyone is doing that. They want their fresh breath, and it makes sense. I mean, we need the microbiome in our mouth for many reasons.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned. I launched a toothpaste, a microbiome friendly toothpaste couple months ago, and in a couple of months, we're launching a nitric oxide friendly mouth rinse. So now those that want to use mouth rinse, we can create a fresh breath, but rather than killing the oral microbiome, we can support and improve the diversity of the oral microbiome while leaving a fresh, minty breath. So stay tuned. We've got solutions on the horizon.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's such good news. Because yeah, I mean, I still will nuke my mouth bacteria sometimes, on occasion, but I'm not doing it on a nightly basis like I used to just do it. It's just routine. You just kind of don't think about it. And even using a natural mouthwash with essential oils is still problematic because even Listerine has essential oils in it. That's how it works as
Yeah, but no,
well.
Listerine, look, all you got to do is listen to the carcels. They said they kill 99.99% of the bacteria in your mouth, and they're proud of that. And there's clear evidence now, the preponderance of evidence says that killing 99% of the bacteria in your mouth is a really, really bad idea. Shuts down nitric oxide production, your blood pressure goes up, you lose the protective benefits of exercise. So I don't
Wow.
know why they're still advertising that.
Yeah, yeah. And I hopefully none of the people listening to this podcast are using Listerine, but some of you might, who you are. But a lot of us we're using the natural ones that have the same essential oils that are in Listerine. Listerine just has alcohol in it as well. But still, even the essential oils they're still doing the same action. Doesn't matter if it's natural.
Yeah, there's a lot that we know, but there's also a lot we don't know. We haven't really collected the data or done the investigations into how these different essential oils at certain concentrations, the idea was to selectively kill the pathogens while maintaining a normal, healthy, commensal, uh, diverse microbiome. And so that's what we focused on with both our toothpaste and our mouth rinse. How do we selectively kill the pathogens, but improve the diversity and improve the ecology of the non-pathogenic commensals so that we can create a normal, healthy microbiome to perform all these important metabolic functions that we as humans can't do, and we rely on the bacteria to do.
Yes. And so is there anything else that we're doing that's harming our nitric oxide production? Like maybe just soaping your body down every shower that you're doing?
That's right. We've developed this germophobic society, right? I mean, people taking a couple of baths a day and using, it still blows my mind when I get on an airplane every week and they're still giving you the antiseptic, antibacterial hand wipes and people sterilizing their environment. And, I intentionally try to sneeze on those people. But, we have to support the microbiome. We can't keep killing it. And people who bathe multiple times a day, typically they have unhealthy skin, they have acne, they have, because you're destroying the microbiome. And that's an important health component of every organ in the body. In fact, dysbiosis is associated with every age-related chronic disease. Gut dysbiosis, oral dysbiosis, skin dysbiosis, vaginal dysbiosis, colonic dysbiosis. I mean, it's all there. And we got to stop killing the bacteria. We rely on these bacteria.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think I'm a proponent of just soaping up maybe once a week. Because you can just get in there, to do your pits or whatever. But yeah, just, I'd be a dirty bird. Just get in there and
Go roll around the
rinse.
dirt. That's what I tell my kids out in the country. Just go outside, roll around the dirt.
Yeah. Well, just rinse off, clean little crevices, but just maybe once a week or even longer. Then you maybe do your exfoliation with your soap or whatever you want. But
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I do. Maybe once or twice a week, I'll use soap. But I've got an ozone generated pool outside, a chemical free pool, and a lot of times I just jump in the pool and fully oxygenate, and that's my bath for the day.
And now a word from one of our sponsors of the Myers Detox podcast. So I want to tell you about a lip peptide treatment that I've been using, and I've gotten amazing results. And it was created to help you restore smoothness, fullness, and lasting hydration to your lips while protecting against visible signs of aging and environmental stress. And what I love most about this lip peptide treatment is that it contains True Energy's signature proprietary biophoton frequencies to enhance cellular communication, optimize ingredient absorption, support collagen production, and helps lips maintain their smooth, fuller appearance over time. Something I'm really into right now at age 53. And honestly, I can't ever see myself using any kind of skincare unless it has frequencies in it that enhances its effectiveness and sends new information to your skin and to your lips to improve their appearance. So this True Energy peptide contains plant-based botanical oils, vegan moisture sealing waxes, and a collagen boosting clinically studied peptide infused with True Energy's signature frequencies to condition, smooth, and energize lips for a healthier, more youthful appearance. And each ingredient is also sourced to meet high purity standards and doesn't contain any synthetic fragrances, parabens, toxic ingredients, or harsh petrochemicals. So if you're ready to smooth away the look of fine lines around your lips, maintain lasting softness and hydration without stickiness, enhance natural lip volume and contour, protect against dryness, flaking, and environmental damage, and energize your own lips repair and renewal cycles, True Energy is offering a BOGO special, so you can buy one, get one free for a limited time for my listeners only. So go to trytrueenergy.com/Wendy3. So it's TRYTRUENERGY.com/Wendy3 to get a buy one, get one offer. This is something that I use every single night. I absolutely love this product. Highly, highly recommend it. Yeah, and so let's talk about what are some of the consequences of low nitric oxide. I mean, you talked about high blood pressure. It affects millions and millions of people. They have, they're just taking medications, synthetic salts, and stuff to manage that. What else can they do?
Well, because there's no clinical measure of nitric oxide in labs, like we can get vitamin D or triglycerides or important things like that, we have to rely on symptoms. So the first sign and symptom of nitric oxide deficiency is erectile dysfunction. And we talked about that because if you lose the ability to dilate the blood vessels, you get erectile dysfunction. And then secondly, your blood pressure starts to go up. And we know 2 out of 3 Americans have an unsafe elevation in blood pressure. So any blood pressure above 120/80 is your body telling you that you're not making enough nitric oxide. And now the clinical data tell us that 1 millimeter mercury increase in pressure, systolic, increases your risk of cardiovascular disease by 1%. So if you're walking around with a blood pressure of 140/90, you've got a 20% greater incidence of having cardiovascular disease. And 150, 170, it's incremental. And so again, nitric oxide dilates the blood vessels, normal, and blood pressure comes down. And then thirdly, you start to develop insulin resistance and metabolic disease. Because in 2011, we published a paper showing that nitric oxide is required for insulin signaling and glucose uptake. If your cells can make nitric oxide, you develop insulin resistance. And then 4, we talk about exercise, but if your body's not making adequate nitric oxide, then you can't maintain a normal exercise regimen. So people who get short of breath, tight of chest, angina walking up the flight of steps, their coronary arteries aren't making enough nitric oxide to dilate the coronary arteries to increase blood flow and oxygen delivery to the working cardiac myocyte. And then fifthly, you start to develop mild cognitive impairment, dementia, and eventually Alzheimer's. So that's the hierarchy that we've documented clinically of what happens. But our body's constantly talking to us. If you have erectile dysfunction, that's not normal. It doesn't make it, especially if you're 20 or 30 years old and you have ED, that's a major problem. That's your body telling you, hey, something's not right here and you need to change course, or you're going to develop high blood pressure, diabetes, and you're going to get Alzheimer's and eventually die of cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, and statins can cause that also. So the cholesterol-lowering medication. So that's a whole. So if you're taking those and you have ED, that's why, or one of the reasons.
Yeah, no, statins, it's a very, very bad medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and so is there an age, obviously there's an age-related decline. So about what age do people need to start paying attention to this and start taking action to increase their nitric oxide?
Well, if you look at population-based studies, just looking at people only selected for their age group, so 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, all the way up to the 90s, we see about a 10 to 12% decline in endothelial nitric oxide production per decade. So that's kind of normal. But today we know that doesn't have to be the case, because we've measured people looking at endothelial function and flow-mediated dilatation in their 20s and look at the vascular age of a normal 60-year-old. And then we know we can reverse that. I'm 51, but I've got the vascular age of a 32-year-old. So we know we can slow this age-related decline or prevent this age-related decline in nitric oxide production. But on average, it's about 10 to 12%. So if you look at the general population, by the time you're 40 or 50, you're down to 50% of the nitric oxide you had when you were younger. And so we've got to prevent that age-related decline or start compensating through this enterosalivary circuit by changing our diet, supporting the microbiome, and having adequate stomach acid production.
Is nitric oxide regulated by circadian rhythms at all, by the sun or wake times?
Well, for sure. Yeah. The sun certainly has an effect on nitric oxide production because both ultraviolet frequencies and infrared frequencies can release nitric oxide that's bound to cysteine thiols or bound to metals. So once nitric oxide is produced, It can bind to proteins, it can bind to metals. And if we're exposed to sunlight, then it liberates that nitric oxide and re-releases it to maintain normal vasoreactivity and vasoactivity.
Yes. So yeah, we got to get out in the sun, everybody.
Sure.
Just like for so many things, for
20,
insulin
30 minutes a day. The first sunlight of the day is best.
Yes. Are you taking collagen supplements? Well, check this out. So our friends at Organifi have sourced the best collagen on the planet, and you can get it with 20% off savings today too. So what is collagen? So it's the most abundant protein in our body. It's everywhere. It's in your muscles, your joints, your hair, your skin, your fingernails, everywhere. And it's one of the fundamental building blocks of life. And your body uses collagen constantly to keep itself refreshed and repaired. But as you get older, especially us women that are going into menopause, you can lose 30% of your collagen within the first 5 years of menopause. And that starts in perimenopause as well. So your body just stops making as much of it and you start losing it, especially as your estrogen levels come down. And so that's why consuming collagen is such a great idea every single day. So it gives your body a fresh supply to keep working at its best. And it's not only good for your hair, skin, and nails, it helps to support your gut and metabolic health, your immune system, your cardiovascular strength, and all of your muscles and moving parts too. And collagen's nothing new. It's one of the oldest supplements out there. And collagen supplements have been around for quite a while now. But what makes Organifi so special is it's all about the quality. So the non-organic collagens scare me. They're really, really problematic because they can be full of glyphosate and pesticides and other chemicals that you do not want to be taking on a daily basis. Because not all collagens are the same. So it can come from many different sources. And the source can drastically impact its potency and effectiveness as well. And some manufacturers just go with the cheapest stuff that they can find and then add fillers and artificial flavors, and they still charge you a lot of money for that. So Organifi always goes the extra mile to ensure their quality is the best. So they blend 5 collagen types from 4 different sources, and they taste and test until it's perfect. And then they go even further to test for things like glyphosate residue and other sneaky toxins that can get into the mix. And after passing through all of these goalposts, it finally gets the Organifi seal of approval. So you can rest assured it's the highest quality and non-toxic. And I love that this company is a company that I can trust, that their products will be safe and effective exactly as they say they will be. And in the supplement world these days, that kind of honesty and transparency is getting harder to come by. So if you've never tried collagen, now is a great time to start. And if you're already taking it, now is a great time to switch to a better brand, upgrade what you're doing right now. So you and your entire body are going to love Organifi. Collagen is something that I take on a daily basis. It's been a part of my supplement routine for the past 5 years since I went into menopause. And so I can't recommend it highly enough. And so now let's talk about saving you some cash as well. Here's what you do. Go to Organifi.com/Myers Detox and put in coupon code Myers Detox to get 20% off. So go to Organifi, ORGANIFI.com/MYERS DETOX. And don't forget the Myers Detox coupon code as well. You'll save an extra 20% off by putting in my special coupon code Myers Detox. So like I said, collagen is one of those things that I take every single day. It's one of the most important parts of my anti-aging protocol, the things I'm doing to fight off the clock. So for me, taking clean collagen is really important. It's hard to find. So I highly, highly recommend Organifi collagen. And what about toxicity? How does like heavy metals or chemicals, how does that contribute to low nitric oxide levels?
Well, there's tons of toxins. We live in a toxic world, but heavy metals, number one, interrupt nitric oxide. So they scavenge nitric oxide. Things like metal, cadmium, any redox active metal. Because when nitric oxide is produced, it has an affinity for metals. So if you have a heavy metal toxicity, it'll scavenge any nitric oxide that's being produced before it has a chance to diffuse into the smooth muscle and dilate blood vessels. So really, people with heavy metal toxicities typically have hypertension because they're scavenging any nitric oxide that's being produced. And then there are things that are the fat-soluble toxins like the glyphosates, the herbicides, the pesticides, that are typically fat soluble chemical toxicants. And those are, disrupting the function of the NOS enzyme, and leading to oxidative stress, which oxidizes BH4, leads to NOS uncoupling, and they develop endothelial dysfunction. So toxins are a huge burden and interrupt nitric oxide production. I think too few people, focus on toxins. It's always trying to supplement what the body's missing and develop or deploy stem cells. But if you're burdened with toxins, your body's not able to do its job. So we have to focus on removal from the source of exposure to toxins, liberating all the toxins out of the body, giving back what the body's missing, and then the body heals itself.
Yeah,
It's
that's
really
what I keep trying to tell people, but
so simple,
they're
right?
not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not
Well, it's
listening to
simple.
me. If you just
It's
listen to
simple, but
me,
it's not easy.
yeah, if you just listen to me, you'd feel so much better. Yeah, so how do we restore nitric oxide? So you have a supplement that helps with that, and let's talk about that and other ways we can naturally restore it.
Well, first, I developed product technology, but I did that because, and the only reason we could do that was number one, we had to answer two important questions. How does the human body make nitric oxide? And then what leads to a loss of its natural production? And until you can answer those two questions, you shouldn't even start thinking about developing product technology. So we have to first focus on is what are you doing that's disrupting the natural production? And that includes using fluoride, which is an antiseptic, in your toothpaste and your drinking water. We've talked about antiseptics. You got to get off antiseptic mouthwash and antacids. If we inhibit stomach acid production, it completely shuts down nitric oxide production from both pathways. And so if you stop using mouthwash, get rid of fluoride in your toothpaste, and wean off antacids, now you've released the brakes on the body's ability to make nitric oxide. And you got to cut down sugar, anything that leads to an increase in blood sugar. Because when we see an increase in fasting glucose levels, glucose is sticky. It's glue, as the name implies. So it sticks to proteins, it sticks to enzymes. And enzymes and proteins have to undergo a conformational change. And if the sugar stuck to it, it glues it into a single conformational change. So it renders them dysfunctional. And that's what we measure as hemoglobin A1C. It's the amount of sugar that's stuck to hemoglobin. So anything that leads to an increase in blood sugar is shutting down nitric oxide production.
What level do you want your A1C to be? Like what range?
I mean, look, I think anything above 5.6 or 5.7 is pre-diabetes, diabetes range, but the lower the better. You don't want sugar stuck to important, like hemoglobin, an oxygen carrying molecule, because hemoglobin itself undergoes a conformational change when it goes from the arteries to the veins. And if it can't undergo that conformational change because it's got too much sugar stuck to it, then you can't deliver oxygen. And that's why diabetics are hypoxic. That's the reason they have diabetic neuropathy. That's the reason they have non-healing wounds, because you're not oxygenating that tissue because sugar is stuck to that molecule, that hemoglobin, that protein.
Yeah, interesting. And so tell us about your supplement. Tell us about and you have a skincare line as well,
Yeah,
correct?
so what we developed based on my 20 years in science and figuring out how this molecule works and how it's produced, we developed what's called an orally disintegrating tablet. And so what we got to remember, nitric oxide is a gas. It's not something you can chew on. It's not something, a capsule you can swallow. So I developed this, what's called an orally disintegrating tablet. But you put this in your mouth and you just let it dissolve. It'll take 5 or 6 minutes. But as it's dissolving, I designed this matrix to slowly fall apart. And then as this matrix is falling apart, we're producing about 20 to 30 parts per million nitric oxide gas. So it's a therapeutic release of nitric oxide. And if I had an ultrasound right now, I could watch my carotid arteries dilate. So this nitric oxide is being produced in the oral cavity. It's dilating my carotids, improving cerebral blood flow, opening up the conduit, the resistance arteries, open up the microcirculation. So I'm fully oxygenating every organ, tissue, and cell in the body. So that's number one. If your body can't make nitric oxide, we have to do it for you. It's similar to hormone replacement therapy. If your body can't make estrogen, we got to give it for you. If your body can't make testosterone, we got to give it for you. And it's no different with nitric oxide. We don't give your body precursors and substrates and hope your body can make it, because that's the reason people are nitric oxide deficient. And then more importantly, we understand we're fixing the enzyme that makes nitric oxide in the lining of the blood vessels. So within 20 minutes of me putting this in my mouth, my endothelial function improves by 20%. And then because it's an orally disintegrating tablet, it's restoring the normal flora, it's killing the pathogens, and improving the diversity of the nitrate-reducing bacteria. So now we're improving the body's ability to naturally produce it, which is no other product technology like that in the world.
Yeah, it seems like a really smart thing to do before infrared sauna as well, if it's dilating all the blood
That's
vessels.
exactly what I do. When I get up in the morning, I take my nitric oxide and I sit in the infrared sauna.
Great.
Helps improve circulation. For mobilizing toxins, we want good circulation so we can excrete those toxins. And so it's a great idea before red light therapy, infrared sauna, hyperbaric oxygen, any biohack or biostack you're doing, you start with the lozenge.
Yeah, and in that same vein, it makes sense that if you have a skincare line where you can put that, I use it as well. You can put it on your skin. You're going to dilate the blood vessels, get that microcirculation and oxygen to your skin, which helps to promote young-looking skin. You need oxygen and nutrients to it.
Yep. Now, look, this was this was first developed, or this concept I developed back in 2014. My dad, who's a paraplegic diabetic from a car accident in 1984, had a 4-year-old non-healing decubitus ulcer. And every wound care doc I took him to said, you will never heal this wound in a 65-year-old paraplegic diabetic. And, he became septic, almost died. And once we got him out of the hospital, I started developing a nitric oxide releasing gauze, and I would change his wound dressing twice a day. And I'd put a nitric oxide releasing gauze in that wound. So number one, kill the infection. And number two, to force blood flow to that wound bed. And within 6 months, we healed a 4-year-old non-healing wound. And these wound care docs were like, what the hell did you do? We've never seen this before. So then, realizing drugs take about 10 years and $800 million to bring to market. So we're now developing this as a topical drug through the FDA. But in the meantime, we've developed a skincare product. This is a dual chamber. You take one pump from one side, one pump from the other, and then when you mix them together, again, it produces nitric oxide. You apply it to the face. Nitric oxide is a gas. It'll diffuse into the dermis and the recruit capillaries, dilate blood vessels. And so we're improving blood flow, oxygenation, improving cellular turnover, mobilizing stem cells. And you can see this product working right before your eyes because your skin will turn a slight pink, and that pinkness is due to an increase in blood flow. It's a new product category in skincare. We've got 6 published clinical trials on it. And it's amazing skincare product.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at everything on the market, believe me. I'm like hunting down places in South Korea right now. I'm like on Instagram looking for all the latest treatments. But yeah, I've never heard of any skincare that's using nitric oxide.
No,
Zero.
we're the first and only one in the game, and it's a remarkable product.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, it's not just about, actives you're putting on your skin. It's not just about moisturizing. Those are super basic. I mean, it makes sense. You need that microcirculation. That's why I love the sauna, because it's also dilating the blood vessels, getting that oxygen nutrients to the skin. And that's where you see the skin aging, especially in smokers. You can see this because that's constricting their blood vessels and constricting the oxygen and nutrients. And that's where you get the smokers lines, and where you see women that are really, really, really aged. It's that, it's that constriction of the blood vessels. So this does the exact opposite of that to maintain youthful skin.
Yeah, and in our clinical trials, we do biopsies. And so with 30 days use of our nitric oxide serum twice a day, we see an improvement in collagen deposition. We're actually increasing the amount of collagen in the skin. So hydration improves, fine lines and wrinkles get better. We've got data in acne, scar remediation, wound care, rosacea, age spots. I mean, look, the skin is an organ just like the sex organs or the brain or the heart. We got to maintain adequate perfusion and blood flow and mobilization of stem cells and improve cellular turnover in order for those organs to be optimal. And nitric oxide does all that.
Yeah. And so where do we get these products? What is your website?
The products you can find at n101.com. It's the letter N, number 1, letter O, number 1.com. So it's one nitrogen, one oxygen, n101.com.
So this episode is brought to you by Chef's Foundry. They've got a fantastic line of cookware called P600. It's totally non-toxic. I think people don't realize that when they're cooking, most people's cookware is adding toxins to their healthy food, that people spend so much money on healthy organic food and then cook it in toxic cookware. And so that includes cast iron, which I do not recommend. It adds way too much iron in a form that we can't absorb. People use aluminum cookware, which is very inexpensive, and it's used at most restaurants, giving us tons of aluminum. People are also using ceramic cookware, which can leach toxins into your food. And not to mention the nonstick cookware. It just has so many PFAS or PFAS that is so toxic. It's one of the forever chemicals. So you really have to pay attention to what you're cooking in. So that's why I recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry, so that you can have peace of mind when you're cooking and you're not getting any nasty chemicals like lead or cadmium or nickel or PFAS in your healthy food. You can get a special discount for my listeners by going to bit.ly/Myers Detox. So that's bit.ly/Myers Detox, MYERS DETOX, to get an exclusive discount just for my listeners. I want you to be thinking about what you're cooking your food in, and I highly recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry. And then what's the story with beets? So you see a lot of beet products out there that are talking about nitric oxide and lower blood pressure. What's that deal?
It's probably one of the biggest myths ever perpetuated in the nitric oxide science. Going back, say 15 years ago, there were data showing that beetroot, which can contain a certain amount of nitrate, when consumed, if you have the right oral bacteria and you have stomach acid production, can produce nitric oxide. So then in the 2012 Olympic Games, almost every country was using beetroot juice as an ergogenic aid to improve their performance. So then, shortly thereafter, hundreds of companies started selling beetroot powders and beetroot products, and they were saying it was a nitric oxide benefit. Now, I've measured and tested every beet product on the market, and 95 to 99% of the beet products, commercial beet products on the market, contain no nitric oxide activity. They're what we call dead beets. And we use these as placebos in clinical trials. If we're taking an active beet component, which we use, versus a placebo. And again, these commercial beet products are great placebos. Because you have to understand, the active component in beet in terms of nitric oxide is nitrate, and there's no detectable nitrate or nitrite in any of these beetroot products. And it's because of a number of reasons. Number one, they don't understand the agronomy and the soil conditions. Number two, when they dry this high brix concentrate into a powder, they use high heat, high pressure. These are water-soluble compounds, and they come out, and there's nothing left in the powder. So beets are not a source of nitric oxide. And yet you turn on your TV, you turn on your radio, these companies are spending millions of dollars every month trying to convince you that beets create nitric oxide and can lower your blood pressure and improve your energy. And then I get complaints all the time, emails saying, "Hey, Nathan, you say nitric oxide is important, but I've been taking this beet product that I've seen advertised for years, and my blood pressure hasn't improved. My energy hasn't improved. My sexual function hasn't improved. So nitric oxide doesn't work for me." And again, that's a huge misinterpretation. Nitric oxide always works. The problem is that product doesn't make nitric oxide. You're not getting nitric oxide, so that company and that product failed you. Nitric oxide didn't fail you. So I tell people, stay away from the beets. I mean, we make a fermented beet powder because we felt we had an obligation. If people want to take beets because of the nitric oxide, then we make a product called NO Beets, where we start with a high concentration of the beets. We ferment them to pre-convert the nitrate into nitrite. So now when people take our beets, it's not dependent upon the oral microbiome, and it's not dependent upon their stomach acid. If your body can't make it, we do it for you. And we remove the oxalates. Most beets contain oxalic acid, which can
That's a
cause
huge
kidney
problem.
It's a huge problem. And people are drinking liters of this stuff or taking these beet products, and it's not making them better. It's making them worse. So don't believe the hype, the marketing. It's deceptive. It's fraudulent. Beets are not nitric oxide.
Yeah, can you talk about the oxalate issue just for anyone that doesn't know what those are or what they do?
Yeah, so oxalic acid or oxalates are found in many vegetables, root vegetables, dark green leafy vegetables like kale, spinach. And if you can overconsume them, and there's different sensitivities, but you can form oxalic acid and they form crystals and can cause kidney stones or exacerbate gout or some of these other things. But they're inflammatory. They're just, you have to limit them. And some people are more sensitive to others. But, people who are trying to get nitric oxide from beets or vegetables are offsetting that by taking the increased intake of oxalates and really sometimes doing more harm than good, especially if they're not providing any nitric oxide.
Yeah, and some people absorb a lot more oxalate from their diet. If they have leaky gut, they're going to absorb a lot more than someone who has a gut intact. So you have to be careful. And also when it comes to high blood pressure, there's a lot of people that are managing their high blood pressure with blood pressure medication. So, they're just trying to get that 120/80. And so that doesn't negate their need for nitric oxide. That doesn't mean you're all good to go, problem solved. I mean, it's
That's
great
right.
to prevent a stroke, but you really want to be thinking about what is the underlying root cause of this condition and how do I address that? Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, there's different classes of antihypertensive medications, right? There are drugs that affect the renin-angiotensin system, which is ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers. There are class of drugs that affect calcium metabolism and transport. We call those calcium channel blockers. Um, and then there's beta blockers that pace your heart. There's diuretics that cause volume unloading to kind of normalize blood pressure. And so physicians need to figure out the etiology of their hypertension. And here's what the real-time data tell us. 50% of the people that are prescribed antihypertensive medication for their blood pressure don't respond with better blood pressure. So what do? You go to your doctor, you have high blood pressure, they'll put you on an ACE inhibitor, typically first-line therapy. Best you may get is 4 to 6 millimeter reduction in blood pressure. But if you're starting at 150 and you're trying to get to 120, you got to put on 5 different medications. So they'll put you on a higher dose, an ARB, a calcium channel blocker. Many physicians negligently still use beta blockers as first-line therapy or second-line therapy, which shouldn't be used ever. So what we're finding is that the majority of people that have resistant hypertension, meaning they're resistant to antihypertensive therapy, have oral dysbiosis. So the people who have resistant hypertension, I go, are you using mouthwash? Most people say yes. Do you have fluoride in your toothpaste? Well, of course. Okay, stop using fluoride toothpaste. Stop using mouthwash. Come back 30 days later, and let's remeasure your blood pressure. And when you stop killing the oral microbiome that are producing nitric oxide, your blood pressure becomes normal. And now you can start weaning people off of different classes of medications. But I tell people, look, if you're managed, if your blood pressure is managed with prescription therapy, then so be it. But everyone's goal should be off all prescription medication. Our body's never deficient in a synthetic compound that inhibits a biochemical reaction, which is what most drugs are. You got to understand the root cause of the high blood pressure, address that, and the body responds appropriately.
Yeah, and so in taking the nitric oxide, do you see an improvement in people's high blood pressure?
That's right. Yeah, so
Yes.
not only providing a source of nitric oxide that's vasoactive and dilates the blood vessel, but we're improving the body's ability to make it on its own.
Okay.
So then blood pressure naturally comes down.
Yeah, and how often? Go ahead.
Except in people who have heavy metals and except in people who have adrenal tumors. So those are the sources of hypertension that we will not bring down with nitric oxide. Because even though we're giving nitric oxide, the metals are scavenging it. And the adrenal tumors are just oversecretion of mineralocorticoids, and it's a volume overload.
So for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com.
And how often should you take the lozenge that you created?
Based on the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, I designed this to be once in the morning, once in the evening, 12 hours apart. That's kind of your daily nitric oxide support. But that's for people who are healthy and just want a kind of a supplemental prophylactic dose of nitric oxide. In 2011, we published on a pediatric patient with a rare genetic disorder, and he had to take one lozenge every 4 hours to manage his blood pressure. And so we monitored this kid for a period of hours and days, and there was no increase in methemoglobin formation, no unsafe drop in blood pressure. So we feel very confident that taking one lozenge every 4 hours is safe. And some people with extremely resistant hypertension require one lozenge every 4 hours. But everybody has to dose according to need. There's not a one size fits all, but What I can tell you is that one lozenge twice a day is kind of your daily supplemental dose to prevent this age-related decline.
And when do you recommend people start supplementing with nitric oxide? Is there like symptoms or just an age that you recommend they start? Because it can't hurt.
No, it can't. I said there's only two people in the world who need nitric oxide. There's the people who are sick and want to get well, and there's the people who are well and don't want to get sick. So if you fall in one of those two categories, you need it. My kids take it. I get 17 and 14-year-old athletes before basketball games, before football games, for recovery. So yeah, I think the earlier you start to recognize the importance of nitric oxide, young kids my kids are very fit, physically active. They eat a good whole food, chemical-free diet. So probably they can get away with not taking nitric oxide supplements because their body's primed and makes sufficient nitric oxide. But again, if you start getting older and you start to see your erections aren't what they used to, your libido is not what they used to, if your blood pressure starts, sneaking up and you got, starting to develop insulin resistance and hyperglycemia, hyperinsulinemia, that's your body telling you, hey, I'm not making enough nitric oxide. So it's better to be proactive rather than reactive. And unfortunately, medicine is a reactive practice, and we got to change that.
Yeah, and can you talk about maybe in more detail about the nitric oxide and insulin resistance? Because high blood sugar is the root of so many different health issues, including hypertension, including atherosclerosis and heart disease, et cetera. Can you talk about how the nitric oxide can help improve that insulin sensitivity?
Yeah. So in 2011, we published a seminal paper showing insulin signaling. Insulin is secreted from the pancreas. And so when insulin is secreted, it binds to insulin receptors, primarily on fat cells, skeletal muscles, and liver cells. Then that tells those cells to bring in glucose, and GLUT4 is the primary GLUT transporter or glucose transporter. And GLUT4 is typically a cytosolic protein, but when insulin binds, it sends GLUT4 to the membrane to bring glucose into the cell to clear it from the circulation. So the question was, what's the mechanism in signaling from the time insulin binds to the insulin receptor till glucose comes into the cell? And we worked out this entire intracellular signaling cascade. So insulin binds, activates an enzyme called, or a protein called PI3-AKT kinase. It's a protein kinase that phosphorylates the eNOS enzyme. Also activates AMP kinase, which is the target of metformin, the primary anti-diabetic drug. But both of those pathways converge on the nitric oxide synthase enzyme. But we know in diabetics that the enzyme is uncoupled and dysfunctional. So we can phosphorylate that enzyme, but we're not producing nitric oxide. And then the question was, well, what role is nitric oxide playing in GLUT4 translocation? And in our 2011 paper, we showed that if we give nitric oxide, it binds, it post-translationally modifies 2 cysteine residues on GLUT4. And when we post-translationally modify those proteins, it leads to GLUT4 translocation, and we bring glucose into the cell. So nitric oxide is the link between insulin binding and glucose uptake. You can't make nitric oxide, you don't get glucose into the cell, and you develop insulin resistance.
No,
That is the mechanism. But it's
really
also the
interesting.
speed-forward mechanism, because if you're not bringing glucose into the cell, you're developing hyperglycemia. It's telling your pancreas, hey, I need more insulin. It secretes more insulin. Now you've got the hyperinsulinemia, hyperglycemia, and that's the inflammatory cascade of diabetes.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how you mentioned that heavy metals, scavenge up all the nitric oxide, and that is one of those mechanisms also where heavy metals promote insulin resistance and diabetes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, look, the basic science, we've completely elucidated the mechanism of what nitric oxide is, how it's produced, where it goes, what it becomes, what scavenges it. And so now it's not a lack of understanding. Number one, there's a lot of information. My job as a basic scientist is to take the information and confer that into knowledge. But there's so much misinformation out there, and people are getting misinformed, and they're confused. I spent 25 years in academia, and if I were to listen to a lot of biohackers, podcasters, they confuse me, because these people, number one, typically have no pedigree, have no credentials, and they have influence over people, and they're given medical advice on things that they have no basis for. So I get why consumers are, then if you watch TV and watch these commercials, consumers are confused. And so that's why we have to do a better job of taking information and distilling it down into basic knowledge that's based on science.
Yeah,
that's
and
really my objective.
Yeah, and nitric oxide, it's just one of those molecules that as you get older, you're just producing less of. And it's one of those things you need to take for anti-aging. Like you need to take some melatonin and maybe some hormone replacement. And there's all this huge list of things that you need to take to replace as you get older. And nitric oxide is definitely one of those.
For sure. Yeah, I say it's a foundational molecule. It's not an end-all be-all cure-all. It's not a panacea. It's not going to, you know, make everything in your body. It's not going to fix everything. But what it is going to do is allow your body to respond to anything you do thereafter. Because without nitric oxide, your body cannot and will not heal. Because it can't. It's not going to get adequate blood flow. You're going to have runaway inflammation, oxidative stress, and immune dysfunction. You can't mobilize stem cells to repair and replace. Your telomeres get shorter. You develop mitochondrial dysfunction. And that's aging and chronic disease. So if we restore the production of nitric oxide, that's the foundation we start with. And now, yeah, you got to focus on detoxification. Yeah, if you're deficient in certain vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, you got to replete those. You got to get good sleep. That's not nitric oxide is not going to replace a good night's sleep. You still got to get sunlight. You still got to get physical activity and movement. And you've got to practice deep breathing and get away from mouth breathing. So it's foundational, but it's not a silver bullet. And I don't want people to come away with that.
Yeah, and that microcirculation is so important. That's why I'm such a huge proponent of the infrared sauna, is just getting all that oxygen and that vasodilation and the nutrients and everything to every corner of your body. And that, over time starts to reduce because of inactivity, not going in the sun, reduction of nitric oxide, et cetera. So by taking that nitric oxide, you can start enhancing and improving your body's ability to, get that microcirculation.
For sure. It's all about oxygen delivery to the mitochondria so the cell can produce energy. Without nitric oxide, you can't deliver oxygen. There you go. Very simple.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the Myers Detox podcast. It's always a joy to have you on. And as soon as I saw that the Diary CEO clip about my mouthwash, I was like, damn it, I've got to have him come back on and talk about this again, because I think that it's shocking, for a lot of people to think that using mouthwash, just that one simple thing, can negate the effects of exercise. And that's very, very compelling. And these little adjustments that you can make in your life can make such huge changes, especially taking nitric oxide when it comes to anti-aging, insulin resistance, improving insulin resistance, and your high blood pressure, which so many people are dealing with, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people are dealing with as they start getting into their 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yep. Now, look, the fact that cardiovascular disease remains the number one killer of men and women worldwide is completely unacceptable. I mean, we know how to diagnose it. We know what causes it. We know how to treat it. And it's not a lack of information. It's a lack of the translation of that information into clinical practice.
Yeah. No, well, Nathan, thanks for coming on the show. And everyone, tell us what your website is again and where to get the N101 nitric oxide.
Well, first, I want to plug my latest book called The Secret of Nitric Oxide, Bring the Science to Life. In this book, I chronicle this, what nitric oxide is, what led to a Nobel Prize, and kind of my personal journey of discovery. And then I encourage people to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dr. Nathan S. Bryan, Nitric Oxide. My job is to educate and inform based on the science. I'm less interested in selling products, but I want people to get educated, become aware, and informed on the importance of this molecule. And do the things that we discuss. Stop doing the things that disrupt it. Start doing the things that promote it. But yeah, when all else fails, we have product technology that does it for you. And you can find that on n101.com.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Nathan, thanks for coming on the show. And everyone, I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Myers Detox podcast, where I love having experts like Dr. Nathan coming on and helping you make those distinctions, make those upgrades that you need so that you can live the life that you deserve. You deserve to feel good. And I just so want that for you. And I love everything I learn on these podcasts. I'm just taking you guys along on my personal health journey, doing all these things that I'm doing. So thanks for tuning in every week.
The Myers Detox podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.